Hello, explorers. Welcome back.
In Nagaland. We're looking at some really serious allegations. Sexual harassment and abuse within the Investment and Development Authority of Nagaland, IDAN.
Yeah, and the accusations involve a senior figure there, Reny Wilfred.
Exactly. And given the nature of these claims, the people involved, it's something we need to unpack very carefully, very respectfully.
Absolutely. And what's immediately striking, I think, is how this all started to surface.
Right.
Our information shows that back on February 27th, 2025, the chairman of IDAN himself, Abu Metha,
Chairman. Okay.
yes, he took the pretty significant step of verbally informing the Nagaland State Women Commission, the NSWC,
About what specifically?
about alleged sexual and mental harassment by Reny Wilfred, who, remember, was joint secretary at IDAN, a very senior role.
Wow. Okay, so this wasn't just some rumor mill stuff. This came right from the top of the organization.
Precisely. A direct intimation from the chairman.
So the NSWC gets this verbal heads up. What happens next?
Well, the NSWC, which is led by chairperson Mrs. Ninjin Konyak, they clearly took it very seriously.
You'd expect them to.
Definitely. And just a few weeks later, on March 17th, they formalized everything, sent a written complaint straight to the Director General of Police in Nagaland.
Okay, so escalating it to law enforcement.
Yes,
Yeah.
and this move, it followed reports they'd apparently received directly from female employees at IDAN in Kohima.
Right. And these alleged actions, what kind of framework are we talking about, legally speaking?
Well, based on our sources, the alleged behavior, it could potentially fall under Sections 5 and 6 of the Nagaland Women Commission Act. That's the 2006 Act.
And what do those sections cover?
They're fundamentally about ensuring safety, dignity, and a professional working environment for women. Violations are taken very seriously under that act.
Okay, so the complaint goes to the police, but what about the women who came forward?
That's a key point. What seems notable is how quickly the NSWC acted even before the police complaint.
How so?
Our information indicates they actually recorded statements from the women involved back on March 5th.
So even before the formal police complaint went out on the 17th?
Exactly. They were already gathering the initial accounts. And then, crucially, less than a week after that, Abu Metha, the IDAN chairman,
He followed up.
yes, he followed up his initial verbal alert, submitted a formal forwarding letter to the NSWC, apparently with more detailed complaints attached.
So it suggests, at least initially, a kind of prompt engagement with the allegations.
It certainly looks that way from the timeline, yes, at that reporting stage.
Okay, so NSWC acts fast, gets statements, informs the police. What about the police response? Bureaucracy can sometimes be slow.
Well, that's another striking aspect here, the speed. By March 25th, police headquarters had already initiated what's called a preliminary inquiry, a PE.
Right, the initial fact-finding stage.
Correct. And significantly, it was led by a female deputy superintendent of police.
That seems, well, particularly relevant in a case like this.
I'd agree. And this initial inquiry, it delivered its findings remarkably quickly, by April 1st.
Just a week or so later, and what did the PE find?
According to our sources, the findings were significant. The report concluded there were prima facie grounds for a full criminal investigation.
Prima facie meaning? What exactly?
Essentially, it means on the face of it. Based on the initial evidence gathered, there was enough substance, enough smoke to suggest a fire that warranted a proper, in-depth criminal probe.
Okay, and under which laws?
Specifically, this was under Sections 75 and 79 of the Paratianaya Sanhita, the BNS.
And those sections relate to?
They deal with serious offenses related to sexual harassment, and importantly, these are cognizable offenses.
Cognizable means?
It means the police have the authority to make an arrest without needing a warrant first, provided they have sufficient reason to believe the offense occurred. It signals the seriousness of the charge.
Got it. So the PE finds grounds for a case. What's the immediate next step?
That determination led straight to the registration of an FIR, a First Information Report. That happened on April 2nd.
The formal start of the police investigation.
Precisely. The case was logged as SCPS Case No. 012025. And Reny Wilfred was charged under Section 74, 75, subsection 2, and 79 of the BNS.
And was there anything else, any special measures taken?
Yes, and this also signals how seriously it's being treated. A special investigation team, an SIT, was immediately set up.
Like a dedicated task force for this case?
Exactly, to ensure focused attention and resources. And it's headed by a senior IPS officer, Indian Police Service.
A high-ranking officer.
Yes. with 4 additional officers assigned to the team as well.
So a significant response. But you mentioned earlier, this isn't the whole story.
No. And this is where, honestly, the narrative takes a really disturbing turn. It raises some profound questions.
Thought so.
Because as we've dug into this, we found that these IDAN allegations, they're not the first time Reny Wilfred has faced accusations like this. Not even close.
What do you mean?
We need to go back to 2021. He was in a different, very significant role than Deputy Commissioner of Noklac District.
Okay, a senior administrative post.
A very powerful position. And back then, in 2021, he was accused under the POCSO Act.
POCSO, Protection of Children from Sexual Offenses.
Yes. That, and also Sections 354A and 354B of the Indian Penal Code, the IPC, related to assault or criminal force with intent to outrage modesty and sexual harassment.
These are incredibly serious charges, especially POCSO. What were the specifics?
The allegations involved the alleged molestation of 2 underage girls who were reportedly working as maidservants at his official residence at the time.
At the Deputy Commissioner's official residence.
That's what the reports state, yes.
This is deeply troubling. What happened with that 2021 case?
Well, what's critical here, and frankly quite shocking, is that a formal charge sheet was filed in that POCSO case.
When was that?
December 2nd, 2021. So the police investigated, found enough evidence to proceed to trial.
And is that trial over?
No. That's the thing. Despite these incredibly grave allegations moving forward legally, the trial is still ongoing. Right now. At the POCSO court in Tuensing.
Still ongoing. For over 3 years.
Yes. And our sources indicate it's quite active. Apparently, 34 out of the 50 listed prosecution witnesses have already given their testimony.
34 witnesses have already testified against him in a POCSO trial.
Correct. So this isn't some old allegation that faded away. It's an active, ongoing legal proceeding involving alleged child sexual abuse.
Okay, wait. Let me get this straight. A senior official is currently on trial for POCSO charges.
Yes.
Related to alleged incidents in 2021. And yet in 2025, he's holding another senior bureaucratic role as Joint Secretary at IDAN.
That appears to be the situation, yes.
Which brings us to, the central, almost unbelievable question here, doesn't it?
It really does.
How? How could an individual already under trial for POCSO offenses continue to hold such a senior government position?
With significant
Power and authority.
It's the question hanging over all of this.
It just immediately throws up huge red flags about, what? Internal vetting, due diligence within the government.
Or lack thereof, potentially. It certainly raises questions about the checks and balances.
And maybe a culture of silence, or just looking the other way. It's difficult to fathom how this wasn't flagged somewhere. What should have happened?
That's precisely the point, isn't it? What message does it send when an official facing such serious criminal proceedings isn't, at the very least, suspended pending the outcome?
Right.
We spoke to an independent legal expert about this. Their view was stark.
What did they say?
They highlighted that this kind of inaction sends a chilling message to survivors, not just in this specific case, but broadly.
How so? Chilling in what way?
It can create an environment where victims feel unsupported, maybe even afraid to come forward themselves if they see someone facing serious charges, seemingly facing no professional consequences.
It discourages reporting.
It certainly could. And furthermore, this expert suggested something else interesting.
Which is?
That these new allegations, the ones from IDAN, could potentially shed light on the older POCSO case.
By showing a pattern.
Exactly. By potentially revealing patterns of behavior or intent. If a pattern of alleged misconduct can be established across different times and settings, it could influence how the court views the earlier allegations, too.
That makes sense. A potential connection between the two sets of allegations.
It's something the investigators in the court might consider, yes.
Did you manage to get any sense of the atmosphere within IDAN itself before this latest complaint surfaced?
We did try. Understandably, people were reluctant to speak on the record, but we did connect with a former IDAN employee.
Yep.
We've altered their voice for their safety, of course. But their account paints a pretty concerning picture of the work environment.
How did they describe it?
They used the word toxic. They spoke about whispered concerns among staff, but also a real, tangible fear of retaliation if anyone spoke out against this individual.
Fear of losing their jobs. Or other repercussion.
That was the implication. It highlights what this person called the dangerous power of silence, especially in hierarchical places like government departments.
Where speaking truth to power is risky.
Extremely risky. When someone in authority faces serious accusations, that fear can, unfortunately, allow problematic behavior to continue unchecked.
It really underscores the courage of the women who did come forward in this latest instance then.
Absolutely. Knowing that potential climate of fear makes their actions even more significant.
So where do things stand right now with the investigation?
Well, the SIT is working on the case, and our sources confirm the police have done the procedural follow-ups.
I mean,
They've formally informed the Honorable Court about the FIR being registered. They've also informed the Chief Secretary of Nagaland.
the head of the state bureaucracy.
Correct. And importantly, they've also informed the Nagaland State Women Commission, keeping them in the loop since they initiated the complaint.
And the investigation itself.
It's ongoing. These things take time, especially with an SIT involved. We'll obviously keep tracking it for any developments.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels like this isn't just about one individual, is it?
Not at all. I think that's the crucial takeaway. What this whole situation seems to expose is a potential systemic failing that really needs serious scrutiny.
The fact that someone could be facing trial for alleged child abuse?
And yet continue to operate in a position of significant authority where new, similar allegations then emerge. It just screams questions about oversight.
About accountability protocols, or
Yeah.
maybe the lack of them.
Yeah.
About safeguarding within these institutions.
Exactly. And again, you have to emphasize the bravery of the women who came forward in the IDAN case. Their actions were absolutely pivotal.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it, of how vital it is to support victims of harassment and abuse.
And to demand real accountability from public systems, not just lip service.
Absolutely. And, for anyone listening who might be facing something similar in their own workplace,
It's so important to say, you're not alone.
please speak up. Reach out for help. There are resources available, and your voice really does matter.
Ultimately, this whole situation forces us to think bigger, doesn't it? Beyond this specific, deeply concerning case.
How the system itself.
Yes, it underscores this fundamental need for, well, meaningful systemic reform within government bodies. We have to ask collectively what concrete steps are needed.
To prevent this kind of thing from happening again.
And to genuinely cultivate safe, respectful, equitable working environments for everyone within these crucial public institutions.
It's not just about punishing individuals after the fact, though that's critical.
No, it's also about the ongoing health, the integrity, the trustworthiness of the systems themselves. What kind of constant vigilance and review is needed?
To ensure those holding power are held to the absolute highest standards.
That's the question, I think. The one this deep dive really leaves you with.